All right, welcome back to the Unnamed Cybersecurity Podcast. We got some names given to us, and honestly, they're kind of scary, so we're not going to talk about those. But last week we talked a little bit towards the end of the year. Today, it's all about trends. What do we think that we're going to see in 2024, and maybe beyond? But let's start with 2024 because we saw some trends at the end of last year that really lead us into a scary start for 2024. But let's start with Bob. Bob, what's a trend do you see happening in 2024?
I think what we're going to see is continuation of a lot of cyber claims not being paid. You know, people are filling out these applications, and I think when something happens now, the insurance company is going to come back and hold the paper up and say, "Hey, you said you were doing this. You backed up all your data. We don't have to do anything to get you back."
We've seen that, right? There's case law that we've seen for that.
There's the Travelers case law from last year where $1.5 million claim was denied because they checked the box for MFA.
I remember that. You think you're saying there's going to be more, Bob?
I'm sure there's going to be more because the insurance companies still don't want to pay. But we're also going to see insurance company. I also predict we're going to see more insurance companies trying to dictate what clients run, and that's a mistake.
Yeah. We're already seeing a bit of that.
Yeah, that's a kind of cooks in the kitchen, right? Mm-hmm. Like, here's the ingredients. This is what you need to do. What do you like? We saw, and I talked about Citrix Bleed before, but we saw how that could be used as an entry point into companies, right? And then they could move laterally inside the company. One thing that we've seen from a cybersecurity insurance perspective is the requirement for privileged accounts or administrative accounts to have multi-factor authentication enabled on them. How many companies have you actually seen do that?
Not enough.
Right. Enough. So if that is a checkbox, and even though they got in by some vulnerability from a vendor, you're still responsible for it. And I think that's the thing that we're trying to talk about is like, even if you're doing everything right and there's a vulnerability on something that you're using that gives a hacker access into your network, if you're not doing things that were on that checklist that they gave you, that attestation form, guess what? That's a problem. And we're seeing this with people that have signed these and they've said, well, we're secure. And it's like, you don't want to find out that you're not following it when the event happens because it's already too late.
Well, I mean, one of the things that you go through, most people aren't aware of it, is when you put these claims in, they're going to bring an IR team in, which is called an incident response team, and they're going to do a forensics on your environment. And it may not have been privileged accounts, for example, was the reason the breach came in, but they're looking for any reason not to pay the claim at that point because they took last year or the year before, it was like $7.2 billion insurance companies received in premiums, and they paid out $26 billion in payouts for cyber insurance. It was crazy for New York. So for the US, it's upside down. So they're looking for every little reason, and you want to have your company basically audit proof as far as being able to survive one of these audits at the point of an incident.
Well, let's take this a little bit further. Matt, do you think that insurance companies are going to ask for proof that you're doing this stuff instead of just taking your word for it?
To be honest, I'm not sure because I think in some cases they should be asking for proof and verifying that we're doing what we say we're doing and that clients are protected and your own network's protected. But at the same time, they're in this to make money. So the fact of the matter is, do they really care? If they can raise rates enough to continue being profitable and say, hey, you didn't check that box, I'm starting to wonder if insurance is really the answer long term. It's important. But we need to keep in mind they're in this to make money.
It's part of the puzzle. Necessary evil.
Are you saying that they have large legal teams? Is that what you're saying?
I may be saying that they have large legal teams.
Just checking.
Insurance companies?
I think that's a mistake to assume that incident response is having insurance, or your company's plan is just have insurance. That's a mistake. And that, to Matt's point, that's a mistake. It's a part of the plan. It's don't
rely on it. I don't mean to be saying don't get insurance or talk down on the concept of insurance, but I don't think it's the end all be all. And that's if 2023 didn't show that, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
We all have to live in reality, right? Like health insurance, we've all probably experienced some level of frustration with health insurance, right? So yeah. Okay, we'll leave that at that. That's another topic. So, but
Do
so
not pass go. Do not collect $200.
so to give the audience like something to take out of this, you have insurance. They're actually asking for compliancy, so it's probably a good idea to have some sort of compliancy program to make sure that you're putting that in your business to make sure that you're going to get covered in the event that insurance has to pay out. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say even going through a whole cybersecurity risk assessment, which I know all four of us offer, is something that's absolutely critical. And that's really stress testing your systems and finding out what actions you need to take, looking at vulnerabilities, holes in the system. And without that, you don't have a roadmap.
Are you saying that guessing is not a strategy?
It is a strategy, just like Russian roulette could be a strategy.
Okay.
It's not good.
So hope and guessing are not strategies. And
Well, they are, but they're just poorly executable. That's all.
That's fair. All right. A written strategy is going to be better.
A written strategy that's implemented and tested is going to be better. That's the problem. You can go to a company and they will give you off the shelf policies, and you can say, yeah, I got policies, but if you're not implementing or testing, that's great. You may have hit a requirement, but are you protected? Are you doing the best you can do to protect yourself in this environment?
Yeah, every business is different. You have to customize everything for your business.
Exactly.
Right. All right, Matt, what's the trend you see?
I wish I had happy trends, but I honestly think we're kind of still going up on seeing these breaches and lack of payouts. But we're also starting to see people talk about it and some action actually starting to occur. So there's no easy fix, but I think just awareness is starting to, initiate change, and I think that's a great thing.
You brought up something. We talk every week about like what we're going to talk about on the show, like in a channel. So the 23andMe breach you brought up, like we've talked about 23andMe before, and their response was interesting. Do you want to talk about the response real quick? Because I think we can parlay this into like what we're talking about.
Well, the 23andMe, this is their response, not mine. Please don't hate me. Was
too late.
Hey, silly users, why did you recycle so many passwords? Because it turns out their systems were not breached through any error of theirs, but was it 23,000 users or so? Passwords were available on the web that were used for other systems. And they moved laterally from there to see other people's data, other relatives' data, and trusted data.
So to add context to this a little bit, what happened is I think it was 14,000, but whatever the number, they checked a box.
I was just making it more impactful. Give it 10,000.
Yeah. Okay. So when you sign up with 23andMe, you can check a box for relative data. So they use those passwords that Matt talked about to get into their accounts, and they scraped the information of like 6.9 million people because they had checked the box for the relative sharing information. Mm-hmm. So apparently 14,000 people, 20,000 people, whatever, were relatives of 6.9 million. Right? When you send your information into a company, this is a danger, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is a private company. You're submitting your information, in this case, your DNA, which is, there's some caveats there that you might want to think about before you do that. But what could 23andMe do better than victim shaming? First of all, what could they do better to educate their users when they sign up? I think that's probably the question to ask.
It's funny when you're thinking about it's the first time I've really heard this, but I'm thinking about something that we've all heard, which is Microsoft has in their EULA that they're not responsible if your password is if you're breached due to your password, but you are responsible if they incur damage because of your poor password management, and you may have collateral damage due to other people being. You're sort of opened up. Like if your account gets hacked, don't come to Microsoft. But if your account was hacked because you just put a poor password and Microsoft suffers damage or their customers suffer damage, you can be technically held responsible by Microsoft. And that's buried inside these long 20-page EULAs that nobody reads.
Well, Carl, can we define EULA? And
user license agreement?
And user license agreement?
South Park episode on this that I cannot recommend that you watch, but it really gets the point across about how I see Chris laughing. I know he's seen it.
I haven't.
Nobody reads this.
Yeah.
We read it, but nobody else reads this. You're basically signing over that, exactly what Carl said. Do as I say, not as I do for Microsoft.
Well,
what do you do if you want to have Microsoft products? What's your recourse? Your choice is not to have them. They're kind of a monopoly in this space too.
yeah, I mean,
You really can't live without them.
you have choices with Google and things like that, but I think the thing for like 23andMe and anything like that is CISA has been putting this out, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. They've been putting this stuff out that they want secure by design.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're 23andMe, secure by design would have been enforcing MFA right from the get-go
Exactly.
and explaining in deep detail to their customer base, hey, if you check this box, this is what can happen. And I don't know. I've never sent my DNA into a DNA testing because this happened to any DNA testing, guys. Like, it doesn't really matter.
Chris.
Yeah, I don't want to know what's in my DNA. That's another side story. But if
I
they're
don't want my data out there either.
yeah, I think it's important that when you're signing up for one, you should take ownership of educating yourself. You should take ownership of not reusing passwords. That is your fault.
Yeah.
If you reuse passwords, that's your fault. Now, 23andMe should do a good job of enforcing certain security restrictions because that is really private information that shouldn't be out there. So it's both sides. It's not victim shaming on one side. It should be both sides take accountability and responsibility for what they did.
Well, and honestly, how hard would it have been on the sign-up form? And I haven't signed up. I know my parents did it. That's the only way I've learned, unless I was adopted. I'm mostly Viking. Yay.
That's much
So I
cooler
haven't
than mine
seen
would
a
be.
sign-up form, but how hard would it be for them to have something under the password thing that says, please don't reuse a password you used anywhere else. Please don't recycle a password. What's the risk?
There-
with a little link.
Not
Just
MFA.
There are
or, hey, what's this checkbox do? What's this checkbox do about
Here's-
sharing information?
here's the other thing. Companies that sign up for these authentication, they can run tests against passwords and reject passwords that are known breaches.
Hey, your password sucks. Reset it, please.
Yeah, they can absolutely do that. LastPass, to add on to this real quick, LastPass just enforced 12 character passwords for everybody, regardless if you hadn't changed it or not. It's been a thing for new customers, but for older customers, they didn't enforce it yet. They've now enforced it, where if you're not 12 characters, at least you have to reset it. And they are doing exactly what I just said. They are checking passwords against known breaches and if you try to use a password that's in a known breach, they will go, no.
This is the maturity that's happening.
This is a trend that needs to continue.
Yeah,
That is something that's a trend that needs to go through everything that we do. If a password, eventually we're going to run out of passwords, so we're going to have to get into some password
That's
management
a
things.
whole
That's another
different
thing. So
brain
let's
pain.
let's go into Carl for so
I'll bring you home with it.
before we finish that, what should you learn here? Before you send your information in, read, don't reuse passwords. Make sure that you understand what you're submitting your information to and what are the collateral damages and what are the things that can happen to you.
Also, if you are submitting, see how secure their site is. Do they have MFA even as an option for you? When we say what we mean by that,
Yeah.
multi-factor authentication. Do you have to use a text message or an app to get a code besides your password?
Yeah. I think it should be enforced across the board regardless of
I
where
think
you
so
are.
too. But that's you at least want to make sure that the site you're submitting to has at least that basic security in it.
So Carl,
I'll bring us.
what's the
home.
trend for you?
Trend for me, 2024. We're starting to see. We've been talking about it. We're seeing states. We're seeing agencies now creating cybersecurity policies at the federal and the local level. Creates a little bit of a challenge for businesses because you get caught in a breach. You could be literally fined by multiple agencies depending on, what type of information is exposed. And one of the new ones that came out in June is what we call the FTC Safeguard Rule. And that's basically takes businesses that traditionally didn't have to comply with what we call personally identifiable information, and they've created some stringent enforcement of this. And so they call them non-banking financial institutions. And with that, they are now required to have certain levels of security, standard policies, employee training, the things that we want to see. It's kind of a consolidated NIST, a baby NIST type of environment. You got to send, if you got personal information, it has to be sent out encrypted. You have to turn on two-factor authentication. There's a lot of steps that go in there. Higher level, you have reporting. Fines range. If you get caught in these fines, God forbid, they can really hamper or close your business. I always say if you're dealing with a federal government agency and they have a 3-letter acronym like FBI, CIA, IRS, you don't want to be on the other end of an audit. And what we're seeing is accountants have been named in this, bookkeepers, and one of the things that's been happening is they're checking off on their documentation with the IRS to file, hey, I am complying with this, because they are named entities. And so my feeling is that this year we are going to see, it came in June, they've given people some time to do this. When we start to see some breaches that happen this year, unfortunately, there are people who've been running their business as usual and they have not made the changes. There's going to be some reckoning coming in, and there's going to be, unfortunately, some fines. I don't wish this on anybody, but at the same time, if we've all talked to people who've been victims of identity theft and what a personal nightmare that is. Mm-hmm. And they have, if you're an accountant and you got 5,000 records or 20,000 and you expose that, you created 20,000 nightmares. And, at the real extreme end of this with those type of agencies, you can even see jail time. And they are going. So my feeling is that the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, is going to bear some teeth, because we are seeing them already. They just did something with what was it, the insurance discount cards, the
GoodRx or whatever.
GoodRx, where somebody took that information and they decided to remarket all that information. And so FTC was not HIPAA, which is the Department of Civil Rights. It was under the Federal Trade. They decided to fine them $1.5 million for that back in December. That's my prediction. This year they spent a lot of time putting that law up and advertising it, and they're going to be looking for a scalp, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be a good takeaway is don't be the first example.
Exactly.
Now, to Carl's point, this does require you to be breached. It does require you to be hacked, and this data be
in the middle of an audit. Yeah, directly.
In the audit, yeah. Because they don't go out and audit for this specifically until there's an event, right? So that's something to be key on.
You inside of your supply chain that has that event.
How easy is it for an event to happen?
Yeah,
I'm not discounting that. I just want people to understand that
your vendors, one of your trusted clients, they get breached, and then the insurance companies go after them, and then you get pulled in as collateral damage into the audit.
Yeah, but there's no auditing firm going out there and just auditing.
No,
this is something that you attest to that you're doing, but until something actually happens,
on the honor system,
right? So that's why there's very little. There's no case law, at least that we know of, from FTC Safeguards idea. Now, this is going to extend probably into the SEC, right? The SEC breach notification stuff. There's going to be case law probably in 2024 for that. So we're going to see some big movements in that in public companies and these non-banking financial services. That there's going to be a reckoning. Like Carl said, there's going to be a reckoning.
I think one important thing about sorry, Carl, but one important thing about the honor system. The IRS and taxes are the honor system too, but when they get you, right? So
and they go back.
It's not an out, right? Yeah.
No.
I mean, I wrote my plane off this year on my taxes, so I don't owe anything, right? That's okay. I don't have a plane, by the way. That's a joke. That's a really bad joke. All right. So takeaway: government agencies may not audit you, but you best be sure that you have everything in line and you've crossed those boxes I'm sorry, you can't even talk today. You've checked those boxes and cross the T's, dot the I's, right? Because you want to make sure that you're covered. And I think a good point here is compliancy is not cybersecurity. Compliancy is a minimal checklist thing. That does not mean you're safe. That just means that's the minimum that they're requiring you to do. So there's still things you probably should do beyond that.
Well, you want to minimize your blast radius.
Yeah. So last thing, I'll finish this off with this. I really want to see a U.S. national data privacy policy that protects all of our data, that puts criminal and civil fines in for everybody that violates it, because this is getting out of hand. There's been one that's called the American Data Privacy and Protection Act. It's been in Congress since December of 2022. Probably won't go through obviously until it might not even go through till 2025, but we desperately need a data privacy resolution here in the United States, similar to GDPR. We need that because you see too much of our data being leaked and there's not enough penalties, there's not enough teeth to it. And it's absolutely insane that we are trying to have 50 different rules with 50 different states. So I think we'll leave it at that. There's AI too that we could talk about. Maybe we'll finish that up with its own show.
We got a whole year. I'd love to learn about that.
Any other parting thoughts on any of this?
Nothing short.
Okay.
Don't stop your cybersecurity program, because 2023 we didn't solve the problem. We still need to work on it.
Yeah. Let us know what you'd like to see for us over the next few weeks. We have some ideas about what we want to share, about what individually we do as businesses, but also we just want to bring more value to you, the audience. So whatever you need from us, let us know. Drop a comment, send us a message. It doesn't matter which one of us you send the message to. We'll all get it. We talk in a Slack channel. So you guys all stay cyber safe. We'll see you next week. Good? All right. Bye, guys.